Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome, one and all, to the kickoff party. We're going to call it a party. I think that's appropriate for the first ever Sanity Custom Input Challenge. Welcome. This is the DevRel team here at Sanity. I guess everyone should go ahead and introduce themselves. I'm Brian, one of the DevRel specialists here at Sanity.
I'll go next. Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm Cap, also DevRel at Sanity, and I live in outer space. So,
awesome. I'm Lauren. I'm also DevRel at Sanity, and I don't live in space. I just live in a regular house.
I can see you, though.
I live kind of in the opposite of space. I'm in a basement, so it's kind of like. And who are you, Knut?
I'm Knut. I live in my inner space.
Ooh.
Ooh.
That's very deep. I like it.
I see.
So we're here to talk about a very important thing. It's a couple of things, actually. First and foremost, it's swag. There's going to be some swag involved. I think everyone can agree that's super important. But why aren't you wearing swag? I'm wearing mine.
Yeah.
My Sanity t-shirt.
Because I haven't been part of the raffle yet.
Fair. Okay, well, we'll talk about that here in a second. But we're trying something a little new. In fact, I don't think there's been anything like it at Sanity. Knut can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But we're going to do kind of a community week-long hackathon around custom inputs and customization inside your Sanity Studio. I'm going to share my screen so we can talk about the blog post that just released about this. The Sanity Custom Input Challenge. What we're going to do is, if you are unfamiliar with our Sanity Exchange, you can join it over in sanity.io/exchange. And I'm now realizing that that covers up the last person in our stream here. But you can head over to sanity.io/exchange, and you can see tools and schema and snippets and all sorts of amazing things that are shared by the Sanity community very regularly. And we want to make sure that if you create something amazing, that the entire community has the opportunity to take advantage of that. I think that's an amazing thing that we have here with Sanity. So we're going to encourage the entire community to take on this challenge of creating a custom input, which we have these things in Sanity called the custom input component, which we're going to actually walk you through today how to create one, where you can customize your editor experience based on a number of factors to make your editors' lives better. But beyond that, when you enter each of these into the Sanity Exchange in the next week, starting today and going through next Thursday, the 17th, you'll be entered for some amazing prizes.
Yeah.
What kind of prizes do we have?
And I'm here to talk on prizes. Yeah, so we have lots of prizes. The first one I want to point out, and Lauren will talk about how to enter, but the first 3 submissions to this hackathon get 3 full passes to JS Nation Live, which there's 35 plus speakers. It's 3 days worth of content, a really great conference to be a part of and to go to. So the first 3 people who submit, you get tickets to the biggest JavaScript conference in the cloud. So get those in. And you want to go back to that list, Brian?
Absolutely.
Cool. So then every contributor, no matter how many or whatever, but every contributor will receive Community Appreciation Plan. That plan will give you 3x quota for any project that you choose. So you contribute once and you get that plan. So that's awesome. And then 5 contributors picked at random will win a Sanity t-shirt. Brian is currently wearing that Sanity t-shirt. Yes. So you will win a Sanity t-shirt, and then we will have 1 grand prize winner, and you will get, and there's a Sanity t-shirt. The grand prize winner will get a sticker pack, which you see in that list, the t-shirt, and the hoodie. So one grand prize winner gets the ultimate Sanity swag pack.
The ultimate
But yeah.
swag pack.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Lauren, can you take us through how we're going to have people enter this this contest?
Absolutely. So the challenge will be, as Brian said earlier, from June 8th, which is today, through June 17th. And during this time, you can create a custom input component, and it can be, a small structure, simple and useful, or it can be complex, or you can just do something for fun. But when you complete your custom input, you want to share that on the Sanity Exchange, and you can either do a snippet or a plugin, or you can even do both, and then you will have double entries for the prizes.
So in order to actually enter that, they need to add a little additional information, right?
Yes. And this is super important, which I think, are you showing examples of it now? Yes.
Yep.
So what you need to do is make sure that you add the custom input challenge tag in the contest array at the bottom of your contribution. So that's how we'll know that you're entering the challenge.
Yes, and this is an old one, so I'm not going to cheat. Not that I can win these things anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and remove that tag. But for any custom input that you create, either as a snippet or as a plugin, add that to the bottom of your contribution, and it will be entered to win. We'll do a Grok query next week on Thursday to randomize and pick both the grand prize as well as all 5 of the t-shirt winners as well. And the more snippets, the more plugins you enter, the more chances you have to win. So be sure to, like Lauren said, the pro tip of make a snippet and then go make a plugin out of it too. That is how you maximize your entries, or just keep making inputs. So let me go back to, sorry about that, to how do we actually get started building. So we've actually revamped some docs around this recently. And so our official documentation is brand new as of about a month and a half ago. And it's going to actually walk you through the pieces to create a custom input. And we'll walk through that today as well. But there's also some additional resources you have. I'm going to talk a little bit later on about this super alpha, super unsupported code generator that you can use to get some boilerplate. We now have a new video, which will be going to the top of the official docs here shortly. And then we also have all of Sanity UI's documentation, and you can use Sanity UI as your UI toolkit for building these custom inputs. And then later, after we walk through how to actually build it, we're going to talk about some brainstorming that you can create without having to really think about things. We'll give you some of our ideas that maybe you can take and build out and do some cool stuff with as well. So as we go through, be sure to put any questions you have in chat, because we're going to be going through and actually building one of these from scratch, and that might be new to you. And I want to make sure that we cover any and everything that you have there.
Are you saying, Brian, that you're going to live code?
I am most certainly going to live code. Oh, looks like our blog post has a 404 for that alpha generator. We'll get that changed out as well. But yes, let's do some live coding.
And if you have any questions during the hackathon, be sure to reach out to any of us. You can find us in the Sanity Slack community, slack.sanity.io.
Yes. So let's dig in and talk a little bit about how to create a custom input. So we're going to do something relatively simple today, which I have, oops, not there, right here. So we're going to recreate this Twitter URL field, and it's not very fancy. All it's going to do is give a little bit of information so that our editors know that we don't actually want them to enter in http://twitter.com/username. We just want them to put the username in, but there's no default functionality within Schema to make this happen. So we're going to actually recreate this, or if we find other wacky ideas along the way, we'll take care of that as well. But the first thing we need to do is actually set up our studio to make sure it is ready for this input. So we're going to do that by creating a little bit of boilerplate. So first and foremost, we want to create a place for our components to live, our custom input components. You can really have this live anywhere within your studio's code base, but I'm going to create a folder called components here. And inside that, I'm going to create a new component file. That component file, since we're doing like a Twitter field, we'll just call it Twitter field.js. And then now we have a blank JavaScript file. Now, every single one of the custom input components are technically a React component. So we need to tell our code base to import React, because we're going to be using that throughout. But in the end, it's just a React component. And really, any React component from the grand scheme of the internet and NPM can be used as a custom input as well, as long as it's some sort of input or visual that you can add to things. And then from there, we're actually going to create the function that we're going to export and actually use as our component in our schema. So we're going to create a new variable, const Twitter field. We're going to have that be the React forward ref. Now, if you're unfamiliar with forward ref, this is actually going to pass references through our studio code into this. So it's actually going to handle things like some of the on focus, on blur, all that for us.
And
I heard
specific, yeah, like React references, right? React ref.
Yes, React
not
references.
The Sanity references. Yeah,
that is an important distinction.
Super important distinction.
Yeah. So we're actually going to pass this a function, and our function is going to have a couple of arguments. The props are going to get passed from our input, and also the ref is going to get passed in here as well. And this is just going to be an arrow function here. So we're not going to do anything huge yet. We're just going to go ahead and return out a component. In this case, we're just going to make this very, very simple. We're going to return out a hello world h1 into our Sanity Studio. h1, hello world, and then we need to export this as the default export of this file. So export default Twitter field. So now that we have this, nothing changes in our studio yet. We haven't told anything in our studio about this. We need to actually add this to one of our fields in our schema type. So inside of our schemas, I'm running the default blog schema from the Sanity CLI. So you could get this by running Sanity init and choosing that along the way. We're going to go into the schemas and the author.js, and we're going to add a new field in here. Let's just put it at the very top just so we can see it easier. You probably don't want your Twitter field at the very top. You probably want it somewhere further down the line, but just to make our lives easier, we'll put it there. So this is going to be a standard string field that we're going to add the input component to. So we're going to give it a name, Twitter, a title for our editors, Twitter handle, and then a type of string. This is the type that we want it to be. This is just a simple string field. And then we'll give it an input component, which is a special property on our schema type. And we're actually going to import that Twitter field component. You'll have to excuse me. I have a cat who wants to join the stream. Awesome. Always important to have your cat with you when you're live streaming. You can see here that VS Code wants to import this in automatically for us. Let's go ahead and take that. You can see we're importing Twitter field from
what kind of magic is this?
It's VS Code magic. I've done nothing to make this work. VS Code gave it to me.
It's very fancy.
Are you impressed, Knut?
I have to write that out like an animal, like a cat.
Hey, not all cats. He doesn't have to.
If it doesn't, then be sure to remember to put the import above.
Yes, at line 1 or whatever the earliest line you have available, import Twitter field, which is what we named the variable, and the default export in the other file from that file path. So in this case, up one directory and then components Twitter field in there. And then that is referenced in our schema. So we'll save that in. If I've done all my work correctly, when we go to our authors in, not that one. Let me refresh localhost because that was actually, I want to make sure that you could see that and log in here. you'd see me juggle which Sanity account I'm using. I did it right. Awesome. So now inside of a new document in our data set, we now have hello world at the top. This is not useless. Like there are maybe reasons you want to be able to insert random H1s or H3s throughout your schema, but it's not super useful. Like there's not a whole lot we can do here. So we actually need to rebuild some of the functionality that Studio would just give us out of the box in order to add our custom functionality. And I want to make sure that I take a pause here for anyone that has any questions or if anyone needs a breather. I'm going to take that as a no. I'm going to have a cat stare at me.
Oh, you can hear the purring.
Yeah, well, he's a happy.
Oh.
So yeah, let's go ahead and create our custom input. All of what we're talking about today is available in our custom input component documentation. You can see here, we already have kind of the basics that we grabbed from that. So if you don't want to follow along today, you can definitely go into our documentation and find most of the code, just little tweaks from where we are right now. So a few things we need to do for more boilerplate. We need to make sure that we have all of the components that we might need from our base Sanity. So we're going to import a helper component called form field. And this is going to help us recreate a lot of what Sanity offers us from the studio in general. So form field from @sanity/base/components. Again, all this is in the documentation for custom input components. And then, spoiler alert, we're going to use Sanity UI, which is our UI kit, to also build some of the things we need. And so we're going to need an input, a text input from Sanity UI. So we'll import that as well. Text input from @sanity/UI. I'm now having more problems typing because of someone.
But Brian, how can you know what Sanity UI includes?
That's a great question. As it turns out, there's also documentation for that lives at sanity.io/UI/docs. And all the components we're going to use today are included in there, as well as a ton more. Like we're barely scratching the surface today of all the things available in sanity.ui or sanity.io/UI.
It would be neat if there was a way I could kind of like quickly sketch up the UI that I wanted. Kind of like a playground or...
Which, as it turns out, we have an arcade.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that. Look at that. So let's actually let's take a moment and let's see if this will just work. I already had the finished code off to the side. Let's see. Nope. a lot of unused there that we need. But you can definitely take all of the components that you find in the Sanity UI docs and play with them in this arcade to see actually how they're going to render on the page for you. And you can provide various data hooks as well in that. So in fact, all the examples in the UI docs are going to actually have links over to the JSX playground as well. So super handy. It's actually built in here with a link over there as well. So very, very good to be able to play with as we build things out. So we're not actually going to do our UI yet. First, we need to make sure we have all of the pieces from what we get out of the props that are passed to this. We're going to go ahead and destructure that. We're going to create them so we save ourselves some typing later on. So we're going to say const object equals props to destructure all of that. And then there's actually a decent bit of stuff that we need to bring in here. So first and foremost, we need the type. This isn't like type string. This is actually the entire schema type and all the information around that, such as the name, the title, if we add additional options to it, all of that's included in the type declaration here. From there, we also need to know what the current value is, so we can get the value of the field. We can also grab whether or not this is a read-only field, which is something you can specify on your schema type. So if it is read-only, we can pass that into our field. The placeholder is information that's also in that type that we can automatically get from our props. Then we need the markers, which are going to contain our validation information. and the presence information. If you're not familiar with presence, it's the way that Sanity overlays the avatars of all the different editors that are hanging out inside your studio at any given time, and whether or not they're working on a specific field. We want to make sure that our custom field also shows that off as well. Get the cat a pet real fast because he's in need. All right. Then we also need to know whether this field has changed. And there's a property on this called the compare value, and that's going to let us know if the current value has changed from the old value and display whether or not this is an edited field or not. And then we also need to know what happens on the on focus, have the on blur, which are what happens when you actually focus into the input and focus out of the input. And then there's going to be some other stuff that we'll add later on as well. But again, this doesn't actually do anything until we pass it into our component that we export at the bottom, that we return at the bottom.
It's almost like having real-time input fields require a lot of stuff.
It does require. Luckily, we have all the CAD passed to us via the props. And many of it is just going to be things that we just pass directly into that form field and kind of get to forget about, which, as long as you remember to do that, no big deal. So we don't want hello world anymore because that's lame. We're actually going to use that form field component that we imported. We're going to accept some children. Our children will actually be the input that we're going to build, but it's also going to accept some props that will make our life a little bit easier as well. So first and foremost, we have the title and the description that we don't want to have to rewrite. We get those from the schema. We want to actually have those follow us through into our input. Scritches. Okay. So we're actually going to pass our title as a prop. Title equals. The type has all that information. So type.title. We're going to pass it our description. And the description is just a little helper text that your editors can use to know what they're going to put in here. So description equals type.description. And then the compare value, our markers and our presence all need to be added on here as well. So we're going to add in the compare value, and that's going to equal, spoiler alert, compare value. And then we're still working at the finalization of the specification, but for now, we've got the unstable markers and unstable presence, both of which should normalize out to markers and presence in the future.
Never.
I hope at one point they do, because it makes me feel nervous. Unstable presence. Going to be that presence object that we get from our props. That's all we need in our form field. It is time to also add a child of our text input and pass it a little bit of information as well. So we imported the text input from Sanity UI. It's a self-closing component, and it also can accept some of our props that we need to showcase the data that's already been put in, as well as a couple other pieces. So we can actually pass this our value, which is, again, conveniently our value from our props. The read-only, which is going to turn this into a read-only field if our schema tells it to be that way. Read-only. We're going to pass it our placeholder, which again comes from that schema declaration, placeholder. And then the on focus and on blur events, so that the studio knows what to do when this is focused and when this is blurred. On focus and on blur. On blur. So we're going to save this in, and I'm going to cross my fingers that I haven't forgotten anything, and we're going to go back and take a look, and now we have our Twitter handle. But take a look at this. I'm typing and typing and typing, and my publish button isn't recognizing anything. We're not actually putting any data back into our data set. So again, we've created something useless, but we can fix it. We can make it a little bit more useful. I feel like Knut wanted to break in there for a second.
Yeah, I was pondering if it's actually useless. Maybe you want something that doesn't change your content, like just like a local little note field that just disappears.
That disappears as soon as you reload the page.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Like an existential input field.
I can see that. Like just be very like, or it's Schrodinger's input. Is there content or is there not?
Someone should actually make a Schrödinger snippet. Like, does it sync? Does it not? Maybe. That would be
It would always
user-friendly.
have to be like, you'd have to mask it. It would always be like that password field, like dots in the input, like make sure that like you never know what's going to come out the other side. That's probably not going to go on in the brainstorming at the end. That's probably probably not what we want. So yeah, so let's go ahead and make that happen. So inside of our code, we need to add a couple additional pieces. We need to have some way to handle the change event that happens out on our text input. So we're going to go ahead and on the text input, create an onChange prop, and we're going to pass that a function that we're going to create, the handle change function. So in our component, give a little more room, and we'll have a new function of const handle change. And instead of this just being a normal function, we're actually going to use a React use callback for a performance boost in this function. It's going to take two different arguments, the first of which is going to be a function. And the second argument is going to be an array of variables for this to watch. And we're going to pass that the onChange variable that we haven't set yet. We're going to grab that from our props as well. So in our props destructuring up here, we're going to pass in the onChange method. And then we'll handle the change inside of this anonymous arrow function. And in this, we also get an event. The event is going to be what the change is, what the onChange is happening on that text input. So we're going to go ahead and, for clarity's sake, create a new variable inside of here, const input value. And we're going to grab the event.currentTarget, so that is that input field, and then grab the value from that. We're going to pass that into an onChange function, that method that we got from our props. But in order to do that, we need to create what's called a patch event. And as it turns out, we have some handy utilities for that. So we're going to import them as well. And again, all of this is available in the sanity.io/docs documentation for custom inputs. So we'll go to import the patch event and also a set method and an unset method from @sanity/form-builder/patch event. That is a file that has a few different exports, the default of which is the patch event. And then it also has a set and an unset mixed in there. And we're going to use that, and we're going to pass a patch event into our onChange method. To do that, we'll call the patch event that we just imported, and we're going to call a function on that called from. And it's going to create a patch event from some data that we're going to pass into it. So in this case, we want to pass in that input value, but we're going to use a ternary in this. We're going to check if the input value is truthy or falsy. And if it is truthy, we're going to set the input to the input value. And if it is falsy, we actually want to unset the data in this field. That way it can return to its original state, which is a null state. So we'll unset that field.
All right. There's maybe two things that might be confusing here.
Yeah.
Because like naming is the hardest thing in programming, right?
True.
We have like a couple of onChanges here, right? Just going to sort that out. So we have the onChange, that is the prop that comes in to this input component, and then the onChange. Is it like an attribute? What's the or prop? Prop on the
prop.
Yeah. This one, which is another thing, right? Just to kind of clear that out, because
exactly. So
that's why. So yeah, but that's why you put onChange into the so-called dependency array of the use callback thing. Yeah, that's just I think it's to keep React from re-rendering this component unnecessarily.
Yeah, it would re-render, I think, on any prop change, and we only want to render on the onChange change.
Yeah,
name.
other way around. Yeah. So yeah, and the patch event thing, that is like, I think that's not a super common pattern, because like we're now handling forms and real-time forms, and within kind of like this input component could be appearing anywhere in the schema. So what this does is to kind of like sort. This is kind of like self-aware. It knows where it is in the studio, so it knows what to patch. So we don't have to actually specify that. We just need to hand it the value. That's sort of neat. And this is also the reason you don't really need to think about state, I guess.
With a real-time data store, right? You don't actually have to worry too much about state.
I guess there might be occasions where you would need some state handling in some way, but it tends to be kind of like doing this patch thing to the document, and then you keep kind of your state there.
You might need to. So in the docs, one of the examples is a string limiter that showcases the count for the number of characters in a field and the maximum number allowed for the field. And in the docs, it only shows it in like gray text. But if you want to like update the color on the fly, you might need to set state for the color at that point, and you'd have to kind of keep an eye on that. But it's for more kind of advanced UI usage or advanced React usage, definitely.
Do we want to get famous, by the way?
Do we want to get famous?
Famous?
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay.
Yeah, maybe
that's always fun. Let's see. All right, that's gone. So if we've done our work properly, we should now have a functioning Twitter handle. As you can see, it does, in fact, like that. It is also automatically creating our author document here because it's the first data change made. And so we can go ahead and publish that and be good to go on it. Now, one additional thing that's not quite right here that we need to take care of before we move on to our custom UI. And that is the idea that the label here is not actually connected to our field, which is not great for accessibility and honestly not great for power users. Like I like to click on labels. That's just who I am. So if we want that to happen, we've got to add a couple of additional pieces. The first of which, or the main part of it, is that we need to have an ID of some sort set on our input that the form field component knows about. So we need to add a couple additional pieces here. The first of which is going to be the ID on our text input. And we're actually going to use another package to do this. So I'm just going to add these in, and we're going to backfill that in. And we need to give our form field an input ID, and the input ID is going to say match up these strings basically, and like connect them and add the for to the label in terms of like an HTML setup there. So we have input ID, and we're going to set those to the same thing, and we're going to create that as a new variable on our component. So const input ID equals. And we're going to cheat a little bit, and we're going to install an npm package from a great package called @reach/auto ID. And this is going to automatically generate a unique ID that we're going to be able to tie these things together with. You could use really any number ID generator. You could just have it be the time of day if you want to, but like this is going to connect things up in a little bit more of a finite way, so that if this is in different spots in your schema, they're ready to go. It's going to automatically generate one for every single time this input comes on screen. So if there are 5 of this input in one schema, it's going to automatically generate one ID for each of them to tie that together. So we're going to go ahead and install that and import that. Oh, it would help if I said npm install, right? And then we're going to import that up here while that installs. Import use ID from @reach/auto ID. And then we'll use that use ID for our input. Use ID as a function. And now we save that in, and I'm pretty sure I did all all of my live coding properly there. And the Twitter handle now automatically brings you in, just like everything else, when you click on the label. Also, all the accessibility benefits that you get out of that as well. So we've recreated all the basic functionality of the input of a Sanity Studio input. We need to do some design work now, which is the fun part. At this point, you could diverge from what we're doing and make your own custom input that has whatever React-based UI you want. But we're going to go ahead and add that little card next to our input to let the user know, let the editor know that we are taking care of the URL for them. Also, making sure that we take a moment to answer any questions that come up in chat.
Yeah, there's one question. Has the contest array been added to the studio? And
it should be. Let me take a look and make sure that that got.
It's there.
Oh, just came through on my end. So from the question. So yeah.
Perfect. Yes, it was not as of an hour ago, so it should be there now, and you should be good to go. Also important to note for the contest, like if you haven't shared a custom input, you can share that custom input in the contest. We'd love to see your new stuff. That'd be amazing. But any custom input that you've ever written, if you haven't shared it before, share it. The community will thank you for it. We'll thank you for it. And hey, swag.
We also had some concerns about APIs and Studio APIs and so on, because we are now refactoring Studio to use Sanity UI, and we are looking at deprecating parts. And of course, I understand that. So maybe we shouldn't get into parts then. Interestingly, you aren't actually using parts for this input component, so
0 parts.
You can make inputs without using the parts system. But that being said, we are keeping compatibility with parts for a good while longer, because there are a lot of components out there that uses it, and we will make sure to make migration guides and all of that stuff. And yeah, so you shouldn't be too concerned about that. And if you have something around that you feel can be shared or useful for others, please share it. And thanks for also letting us know about your concerns. We're always there to listen. So yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So shall we make a new piece of this component?
Yes. Let's do it.
We're going to use a few additional pieces of Sanity UI. Excuse me, I really have to get this cat off my lap now.
No.
Is the cat connected to the demo gods in any way?
I think so. You heard me doing a demo and like that. He's 18 pounds though, and I couldn't feel a leg. So I think that's more important right now. So we have a whole bunch, like I said, a whole bunch of pre-built components in Sanity UI, avatars and containers and flex and grid and popovers and radios. We're going to start and we're just going to add a simple text component to our input. So we're going to come down here and we're going to say text, and we're actually just going to insert some text inside of it. https://twitter.com. Now we need to also import this at the top. It turns out VS Code doesn't always know and is not always magic. So we're going to import that with this text input as well. So text input and text are both going to be available here. So we have a text with the text that we want to display. And then in our custom input, we now have twitter.com. We kind of want this to be side by side though. And if you're familiar with CSS, you're familiar, there's a property called flex, and flex puts things side by side as if by magic. I love flex. It's amazing. We have a flex component that's going to handle that for us. So let's wrap our text and our text input in a flex component. We're going to grab the text and the text input and place it inside our flex component. Save that in. These things are magically going to go side by side. Oh, after you import flex. Each of these components I need to remember to import. I'm trying to kind of do it on the fly as we go, so it makes sense. And I don't do spoiler alerts like before. But now we have a flex component and we have flex. Things are now side by side. So the first thing I want to tackle in fixing the UI for this is I want our input to be full width. So quiz for chat, I'm going to explain immediately after anyway. So get your answers in fast, I suppose. Why, if I make a flex element, do they shrink like that? 2 seconds to pause. The answer is that flex as a CSS property automatically sizes the elements, the content, by the content size. So our input can't be full width because flex says it should be only the size of the input itself, which is smaller. So we need to give a flex grow value to our input. And to do that, we're going to wrap it in a box, which is kind of our smallest, least intrusive container element inside of Sanity UI. So we're going to say box flex equals 1. That's the grow and shrink value. We'll wrap our text input in that and then import it, because if we don't, Studio will crash. Import that. One UI issue fixed. Good to go. The next thing is you might look at this and say, oh no, that's not vertically centered. And again, if you know flex, you know we can vertically center things relatively easily in CSS nowadays. And those same relative ease CSS properties are baked into Sanity UI as well.
I was just to suggest, like, put 5 pixels on the padding.
That also is something that we can handle. I was going to get there. We're almost there. Thank you for your suggestion, Knut. It is a well accepted and handy suggestion that is very important for about 3 minutes from now.
2013, then you would do that, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're still going to add some padding, but we're going to add some componentized padding to it. So because we have this text here, we also want it to be vertically centered, and we're going to use flex properties to do that as well. So we're going to use flex as a component again inside of our flex component. As it turns out, you can nest them, and they work out pretty well. So the main thing that we want to do right now is to add an align property. The align property functions like align items in CSS for the way that we can handle the vertical spacing for our items. And we're just going to tell it center. And center is the default CSS value for this property to center things vertically. So we now have twitter.com vertically centered. The next thing that we want to do is, as Knut mentioned, add a little bit of padding, because this gets kind of ugly kind of fast, right? So we can't do that on the flex element. We can do it on a component called the card component, but I don't want to have any more nesting happening in my component structure. So I'm going to use the as prop to say, I want this to appear as a card, which we need to import up top as a card. And the card component has a lot of great stylistic elements that we can add. The first of which is going to be the x-axis padding. So you can do all the padding that you want, top, bottom, right, left, all around values, or you can specify, I only want padding on my x-axis, left and right padding. So in this case, I'm just going to pass it a unitless number, and it's going to be converted inside of Sanity UI to a specific value that is going to be the best value for the current sizing. But you can see here, we now have a little bit of left and right padding. Now, according to the UI that we showed at the beginning of all of this, which I no longer have because that studio is not running anymore, and I refreshed the page, we want a little box around it. And we want that box to kind of line up with the way that the border works on our input. So in order to do that, we're going to create a border Boolean, which is just putting border here on our component, on our flex as card component. And we now have a border around that. But we also have a double border, right? A border on the right of our card and a border on the left of our input. Also not super ideal. We can handle that by saying that the border right should be false. We lose that one additional pixel of border from the middle.
Neat.
Neat. I like the subdued nature of that neat. Like, yes, you removed one pixel. Neat.
Neat.
So I would also say that from a design perspective, the Twitter URL here is a little bit big and a little bit heavy in terms of a visual weight. So let's tackle that with our text component, and our text component can take a few additional pieces as well. We can specify a size equals would help there, of 1. And we can also tell we want this to be a muted value. We want this to use the muted color scheme that is default to our theme inside of Sanity Studio. So our text shrinks, and our text is now a slightly lighter gray than our input, making it kind of fade to the background a little bit more so that it's not super in your face about it.
Maybe we should mention like size 1. What kind of measurement is 1?
That's an excellent question. You can see here in the documentation that there's actually multiple sizes you can pass, and they're going to kind of play off of the theme sizes with the Studio code base at that point. You could specify any CSS values you want to. You could actually put a style prop on any of these components and specify things yourself. But for the most part, like trusting to the theme is going to go a long way to keeping things very consistent inside of your studio.
Yeah,
so comment in the chat, and I've been looking at this as well. So thank you, Catherine Coates. But shouldn't there be a slash after the .com?
You know, you're probably right. But what if, that's a great question and a great segue. Thank you.
Visually.
I was just about to mention the nitpicky details of Sanity UI, and then we got sidetracked by this missing slash. But yeah.
So if we want to, we could definitely. Oh, go ahead, Knut, go for it.
Just to close the loop, right? So the one thing is because underneath Sanity UI, there's like a lot of calculation happening to get things in line, kind of. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's kind of like relative sizes that will kind of make sure that things are lining up neatly. Loop closed.
Nice. And I'll also point out, like Jeff in the chat, Jeff J. Ball. That's an excellent question. My initial thought is that if we put on the exterior one, the text input may not stretch to fill. And I don't know. And I'm willing to try that out. But I do want to kind of close the loop on Catherine's question, because I think that was actually the next step in creating this component anyway. We'll try that though, because I'm interested to know. I didn't actually try that on the fly, but a good point. So right now, if I want to change this, I have to go into this code, into my component, and add the slash, right? But what if I want to use this and have that first bit be different depending on where it is in the schema? I might want to actually define that in my schema instead of defining it in the custom component. As it turns out, we can do that. So let's not add it here. Let's go ahead and add it as an option in our author schema. So we'll add an options object, which is actually an object that you get in your Sanity schema that has a whole bunch of other things you can do. But you can also add your own version of properties inside of that you can use in your custom components. So in this case, we're going to add a prepend option, and that prepend will be some string. So in this case, it'll be what we have. We'll actually make this twitter.com/. We'll make sure we have the slash in this one. This does nothing yet, but we can now use this from our type prop in our custom component. So in our custom component, we're going to remove this, and note right now, there's no slash at the end. So a good idea to not have the slash there. And we're going to change this to be the type options prepend, that made up value or that made up property that we added to our options object. Save that in, and now the slash appears. So on the fly, in any place in your schema, an editor, or I guess a developer, can add this value and change the way it displays. Now, if they don't add it right now, we'll actually get a pretty big break happen. So let's pretend that we don't have a prepend value inside of options. Well, actually, that worked. I didn't expect that to work. But let's pretend like there's not an options object, because the options object is actually who would put a blank options object there, right? There we go. Studio crashes, not a good experience. So we want to come in here and use what's called optional chaining, which is an ES like 2021 or whatever JavaScript option that actually says if there is no options object here, just don't have anything, right? So in this case, it will now work without that options object. Now, you'd want to do some sort of conditional around this little area here to get rid of that card if there's no options object, but it would be super handy. And you could actually do multiple things around that if you want to. You could take any of the pieces in your schema and adapt them on the fly inside your custom input component. And then we could obviously change this back and have our options object and have like, awesome.com. And this could actually become a multi-purpose input component if we change the name to be prepend input field, which I haven't done, and it's not in the Exchange. So if you want to tackle that, all the code is basically written for you. Change some names and tackle that and add it. But you can see here that now it's awesome.com as a prepend to that as well.
So speaking of submissions, we actually got our first one by Annie.
Woo!
Which means,
Yay!
Annie, you have the first JS Nation pass, one of the 3. So
Absolutely.
Congrats.
That's amazing. Thank you for being
so
so fast on
awesome.
the submission. Now I want to see. So let's go to sanity.io. Let's all go. If you're watching, just go sanity.io/exchange. I'm assuming that she added it as a schema and snippet. Hey, look right there. I'm guessing it's this one, color hex with swatch. So you could actually come here. You could copy this into your studio, into your studio code, and you could use this unique color input.js piece. A basic text input that expects the user to enter a hex code, which will be used to display a square colored with the input's value. Super handy when you're playing with different color schemes inside of your data set. That's awesome. We'll reach out in Slack with the JS Nation Live invite shortly.
That's cool. Now I want a confetti input component, whatever that is.
Or an input component that as you type in it, like has like a particle effect for each letter typed. I've seen some people with like a VS Code implementation with that.
Yeah.
Kind of curious. I wonder how easy this will be. Let's see if I can make this component real fast. Color input.js. Save that, and let's add a new field. I think this is probably supposed to be a string. Field. Color swatch, type string, and a input component of color input.
I think style components is like a pair dependency or something of Sanity UI, but in a kind of like a real life situation, I would probably add that as well as a dependency. But
so I just forgot to add a comma first, but let's, I kind of wonder, does this work? No, okay. So
needs to be hex code.
555. We have a swatch.
Maybe you need to lose the hex. Or
aha, there we go.
Oh yeah. There should be
Very
a prepend thing to that thing.
Somehow stacking would be super cool. What's somebody's favorite hex value?
Mine was 555555 because that's my favorite number. So when you type that out, I'm all Brian.
Yeah.
I just mind melded.
ED. That's
a lovely gray. I like that.
Yeah, it's my favorite gray.
Would it kind of like a dev ASMR thing be to just read out hex codes a lot?
BADA55, which I also know that we could look at that, and thank you for that. Let's try Henri's FF
dead.
Nice.
Oh, that's a pretty color.
FF dead. I didn't expect it to be. Yeah, it's
so
That's
pretty
awesome.
considering it's got the word dead. Coffee, I like that. That's great.
Coffee with the 0.
Ooh, that's pretty too. I like that.
I feel like it should have been brown or like A creamy color.
FFC 600 is a lovely goldenrod. Would we call that goldenrod?
Yeah,
Goldenrod.
it is goldenrod.
That got Lauren. I wasn't expecting that.
No.
West Boston yellow. Yeah.
Oh,
So I want to show one more thing, and actually, while I show it, I'm going to need to add it to the documentation too. But you might have noticed that there was a decent bit of boilerplate that still went into it, and I'm not going to lie, there's a decent bit. Let me find the URL real fast. My repositories. This comes with some very heavy disclaimers. Sanity. I'm doing it off screen, and I apologize for that. Oh, where is it? All right, we'll do it on screen so that everyone can see me fumble
So
around.
controversial. Yeah.
So let's go to. I should have had this up beforehand. My repositories. Let me find custom. Can't spell custom input. There it is. Oh, it's because that's why. All right. Let me turn off the privacy on that.
Oh.
That's why it was
This is like a
404.
launch.
Look at that. We're launching. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're now entering the world of open source maintenance, Brian.
Yeah. I know. I'm great at it. Let me tell you. All right. Where do we set the privacy actually?
change visibility.
Visibility, yeah.
All right. Make public. All right. So again, you can tell this is not official because it's in my account and not in the official Sanity. But there is a CLI that I've thrown together to make your lives easier during this contest period. It's just a simple code generator. So nothing, you can see I'm like leaning heavily. Experimental. This is experimental, y'all. But there's an npm package that you can install globally. npm install -g Sanity Custom Input. And when you get that, you can run the custom input command. And it's going to walk you through a few steps. We'll run that here. I think I've already got installed. It's going to ask you if you want to make currently available string or object input. So you can do either one of those. And pull requests are welcome. So we'll do a string component. It's going to ask you what directory you sort in, because maybe you're not like me and you want to use a source directory and I use a components directory. So go either way. This is in the components directory, and we'll create a new second field component. You give it a component name. It's going to write it into that directory for you, second field, naming it what you named it, and documenting all the different pieces with the basics. So this will now create a simple default Sanity string field that you can then customize with whatever you want at that point. And same for the object field. It will work the same way. The object field is a little bit more complex. There's an example in the docs on how to build that as well. So if you're interested, that link should now work inside the blog post, which we'll go back to.
I think you could probably also just run npx, right?
Yeah, you should be able to do that exactly. Let's get that
npx
Sanity Custom Input. Like, oh, well, it wants to install it anyway for you, but yes. I've never actually tried to run a global CLI like that. Like I know Create React App does that. The Vue CLI does that.
Yeah, maybe you need some entry point thing or something.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that works too. But you can always install it globally as well. So that should help you get the bootstrapping that you need for each of these. All that boilerplate will be available for you. Everything that we did for the first 20 minutes or so, that all just comes out of the box with the CLI. But again, highly experimental. So yeah.
It's really cool, Brian.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we'll share that in the community as well. If you're not part of the Sanity community, be sure to go ahead and head over to slack.sanity.io and join the Slack community and ask any questions you've got in there as well. So what we can do to spend the rest of the time is make sure if there are any questions, we answer those, but also like chat and us. What are some ideas around custom inputs? I really like the color input. That was super cool. It's not like a big color input that's doing a ton of stuff. It's simple and clean and elegant. But what are some other ideas that we can kind of talk about as well?
I'm so sorry. I have to leave now because I have a meeting. But yeah, this was great. Can't wait to see what comes out of this. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Knut.
Bye, Knut.
Yeah.
The life of a DevRel manager. Meetings. The rest of us get to hang out and play, which is way better. So yeah, I put a few things in the blog post for some ideas, but we can also talk about some other ones that might be of interest. So I'll throw this as an icebreaker here, chat and Cap and Lauren. Any API, any third-party API, you could import data from.
Oh.
And if we want to go one step further and show that, ignore all the things I have open on my computer that I shouldn't have open while streaming. Someone was asking about Isbn Input, though. Yes, absolutely. Could populate book information into a document. That would be super cool. Because also one of the inputs on the in that blog post is a QR code that could automatically like show the preview of the QR code. But like Isbn Input that automatically grabs the data, absolutely. That would be super cool. Well, hold on. Let's put that on screen. Yes.
Kind of like the same idea with that YouTube like ID.
Yeah, and just like automatically populating all the data and the embed and all that from a YouTube video. That would be amazing as well.
I have this heading custom component for showing a title between fields in the studio.
Ooh. Heading component. That's actually that could be really cool for like showing your editors like what exactly is happening at any given time. Yeah, I did like let's get that into the exchange. Let's make sure it's there. But I'm a huge geek. Those of you who know me know that I'm a huge geek. And so I have an experiments folder on my laptop for some weird experiments that I do. So let me run this. A little game called Dungeons and Dragons. My internet's not great right now. DND, and you can see that's actually the directory name, DND. It's not Do Not Disturb, it's Dungeons and Dragons.
How did I know it wasn't Do Not Disturb?
Right? I actually quite like being disturbed. So let's refresh and get the new studio. And so I did some experimentation. I did some imports and got some spell information imported. Those don't have custom inputs. But I have an arena builder now that is all custom input driven. And it's not like a finished product at this point, but let's create an arena in the D&D game that Lauren, you, Cap, and I are gonna do.
Yeah, Brian, you didn't tell us you had this.
I'm excited about it. It's not complete, so it's like, okay. But like Wizards of the Coast has an encounter builder in all of their cool online tool set, but that's like $20 a month or something. Like, let's do it with API data from. Let's see if I even have this still in my dnd5eapi.co. The cool thing is I didn't have to worry about like OAuth or anything. This is like a completely open API for playing with, which has like monster spells, character stuff, all that stuff built in. So let's give our arena a name, Stream Arena. And then let's add some monsters to our arena. This is an array, and the array then has a custom object component inside of it. So we're going to have a bandit named Robert. We only want one Robert. And then we're going to find the bandit automatically populated right now from that API. So we're going to find the bandit with an autocomplete component from Sanity UI. He'll be our bandit captain. Our bandit captain will be named Robert. So we'll grab Robert. He has an index. From this point, you could do one of two things. You could store that index and then on your front end or in your build system, import the data. But I'm extra. I want that data grokkable. I want that data in my studio. So all of this data is now being stored in my content lake for this specific monster, his walking speed, his hit dice, his charisma, which is 14. That's pretty good for Robert. All sorts of information is all stored in there. And then I'm extra. So this is a custom preview for our array that actually puts his challenge rating or his count next to him and his challenge rating underneath him. And then let's add, I don't know, like 6 green dragons. So we'll give a name of green dragon. We want 6 of them. Then let's find the green dragons. Adult, ancient, wormlings. We'll make it ancient. Ancient are more powerful. So let's like destroy our players. So we want 6.
But I like the wormling.
Oh, you want the, okay, if you want the wormling, no problem. All right, so we've got all these wormlings. Let's get the green one. Green dragon wormling. Changes all of our data on the fly. That's patching back to our content lake every time we change that field. And now we have 6 of these. It says challenge rating 2. That can't be right. Anyway, still a work in progress. But this is all, so I'm grabbing, when I open up the autocomplete, it grabs all of the monsters from the API. When I select a monster from the dropdown, it then runs and hits that ID of at the API and grabs all the data for each of those monsters and then populates it into my content lake. And then like I've got theories that like in the future I can come into Vision and be like, for this other arena, like what's all the math? Here are all the ratings for that one, and like make sure I'm not actually going to kill my players and that sort of thing. Huge geek, totally understand, but using a third-party API to pull in data, maybe this is a project management tool, or maybe this is pulling in your Shopify data. Let's just pretend I did something like super handy like that.
This is amazing.
Yeah, this is super handy.
So it's a question. Once you select a monster, if the API was updated later, with the data for the monster update, that's actually an excellent question. So that would be the use case for not storing the data in your content lake, right? If it's going to change rapidly in the API, you're probably only going to want to store the index or the ID for that monster. The downside is you lose some of your grokkability of it. Like you lose the ability to, in one API call, like do all sorts of cool data manipulation. But the upside is it's always going to be fresh data. So for quickly changing APIs, that's probably the direction you want to go. And then honestly, for like API calls in other ways, like it might be better to do that on the front end when the user is like selecting something. But for APIs that don't change a lot, like, I mean, this D&D 5e API, which is like open source, is probably not changing. Like, so I feel comfortable with that. And then it gives me all the power that I might want from Grok at that point. But that's a great question. It's definitely, every time you would select it again, it would pull that data. So it's definitely better. Like maybe I could even bake in to my custom input the ability to refresh the data. I could add a button for each of them. There would be a refresh button that would automatically go and fetch that data again. So again, it's all dependent on where you want your data to live, where it needs to be refreshed the most. But it's definitely like an architectural question that's on probably a per input basis.
Yeah. Does IMDb have an API?
That's an awesome question. API.
Because it would be cool to put like a demo custom input on our like movie database.
Hey, look, there is a REST API. Well, I thought there was. IMDb developer. There we go. Developer.imdb documentation. So yeah, like absolutely. Like if you wanted to add an input that grabs a movie and like creates people out of it, like in the movie database, 100%, that'd be awesome. I think the data may have originally come from the IMDb API as well, like when they actually first put that together. Because who researched that? Like no one researched all that.
Yeah,
like
no.
someone grabbed an API and did that.
No one knows all of Matt Damon's movies.
There's too many to count. I can't even count that high.
Too many to count.
So many.
Matt Damon plus, right? That's actually what it is. But yeah, like what are some other use cases? What are some other APIs, like both serious and fun? Because the fun ones are also great for education. So if you're posting to the community and you're posting like a Pokemon API input, like that can teach somebody in the community how to make one of these components as well. So that's super appreciated as well.
I was just going to say the Pokemon API.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. Well, what would you do with the Pokemon API?
You could create battles, because Pokemon API has like their, I don't know what it's called. They're like,
I think it has all their skills. Yeah, it has like a whole bunch of stuff in there.
yeah. You could
This is for the
create
Ditto.
moves.
No one likes
Yeah.
Ditto anyway.
Eevee. Eevee's my favorite.
Oh, Eevee? Okay, we can do Eevee. As long as it's within the first 151, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's even like evolutions.
There has to be.
You would think
There
that,
has to
but it
be.
doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
Not seeing it. Although we do also have something in chat, which I want to pull up. Openweathermap.org has an API.
Yeah, that's cool.
Ooh.
Open, come on, Chrome. You can do it, Chrome. Open, all the resources on my computer are being used and other things. Openweathermap.org. API.
I feel like Canute right now with half my face covered.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah.
It went away.
Totally. I felt bad. Like there's actually an option somewhere in here that makes sure that that doesn't happen, but I couldn't find it on the fly. Current weather data, hourly 4-hour forecast. Yeah, solar radiation. Handy. Like I could see like a news organization utilizing this and then like on the fly being able to have maybe in portable text an object to like display something cool in there. There's a dog API. A dog API.
Of course there is.
Ooh.
Oh.
Dog.co dog API. What?
Popper.
Breeds submitting your dog. What? Let's. So we can fetch images. So not for this challenge, but for a future challenge, it'd be super cool to see a plugin that is a. There's actually one that builds like random human faces, but maybe one that is an asset source, a custom asset source for dog pictures or cat pictures. There's a cat place kittens is a thing. Documentation. So yeah, I could see this being super handy actually for a shelter, right? Like if somebody built a shelter's website or everything for a shelter using Sanity, when they have a new dog, they could choose a breed from in here. They could have all those listed. I don't know what's actually in each of the breeds information, but like then you could do all sorts of cool stuff around that.
Oh, there's a Marvel API.
There is a Marvel API. That's true as well. Yeah, Marvel API.
It's just like all of Magneto's kids.
Well, that's like most of the Marvel universe anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren, for the nerd jokes. Like,
you're welcome.
Appreciated. Like super granular there. That was nice.
Yeah. My true nerd colors are showing.
But you could use the Marvel API to also like talk about like maybe a collector, like a comics collector. All the comic issues, I'm pretty sure, are stored in the API. You could then like pull those in to your content lake in that way as well. Does my hello component count for the contest input? I'm gonna make a noise. I got a whole bunch. I feel you. I feel you. Yeah. I would say that the custom component for showing title between that maybe responds to your schema, like that could be super handy for someone, like sectioning off your stuff. Definitely would be good there, I think. Div hello. Maybe not. We'll see. So it's like one of the things that I put together in the documentation is that like character limiter. So not only can you use external thoughts, but you can also use stuff like validation. So if you have a validation on your string input that has a max character set or a max character limit for your input, honestly, we don't show that. Only when you reach that limit and go over that limit do we trigger that validation and show you're over your limit. So having that change on the fly is a super handy thing. That one's already in Exchange. I apologize. I made that one and shared it a few weeks back. But something along those lines that utilizes other data from within Sanity as well. I like this idea to pair with Cap's latest foray in the free code camp world of creating a recipe tracker, like the ability to have a recipe ingredient component that converts on the fly and stores all that data as an object in your content lake. Like, I think that'd be a super powerful thing to do. So go watch Cap on Free Code Camp, build the recipe Next.js app that she built there, and then come back and make that into the studio that you've got. Build a custom component that handles those inputs in a different way.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's do a quick reset for everyone who joined us late. The Sanity Custom Input Challenge is live now. What you're going to do is create a fun, useful, complex, awesome, simple, amazing, whatever custom input and add it to the Sanity Exchange at sanity.io/exchange to be entered into a raffle to win these amazing things. One of which has a time limit. JS Nation Live starts tomorrow. So our first 3 contributions in this competition, one of which has already been claimed because someone was on top of their game, will win a free pass to JS Nation Live, which is a conference starting tomorrow with a lot of amazing speakers. Past that, every contribution that gets submitted gets a community appreciation plan, which has a 3 times quota for a project that you have with Sanity. That's 3 times your API usage, 3 times your requests, all that 3 times, which can be super handy on a lot of use cases. So definitely very valuable there. And every single contribution that you tag as part of this competition, as part of this challenge, will get you that community appreciation plan. In addition, 5 lucky raffle winners will win picked at random as contributors. So if you partner up with somebody, like, we'll actually pick a person, so that counts for each of you as an entry. We'll win, I'm wearing one right now, but a Sanity t-shirt. And then we'll have one grand prize winner that will win the t-shirt, Sanity sticker, portable text sticker, and a hoodie. A Sanity hoodie, which is awesome. I don't have one. I want one. I wear a hoodie every single day because it's cold in my basement. But every contribution you make will enter you to win the grand prize as well as the other prizes as well. And how do you do that, you might ask?
When you're in the studio for the exchange,
Which you can access, yes, community.sanity.tools.
Mm-hmm. And at the bottom of your submission, at the very bottom, you will see contest tags. So click on Add Item, and then you will see Custom Input Challenge. So that will be the way you enter into the challenge.
And you might notice that this is an array with a reference, which means we may do more of these types of things in the future as well with other features within the Sanity ecosystem. So do keep an eye out for all of that. Do submit, again, useful, creative, fun, educational, simple, and elegant, any custom input into this. You can also submit them on the as a plugin if you know how to kind of go through that process. It's a little bit more arduous, but you get 2 entries out of it. So pro tip in doing that. As you go through this, if you have questions, feel free to reach out in slack.sanity.io in either in the help channel, #help in there, or just reach out in any of the channels that seem relevant. And again, we have additional resources for learning how to make these. Go to that blog post, which we'll share in chat right now. To get started, there is the official documentation, which walks you through creating a custom string input and a custom object input. There is the alpha experimental custom input generator, which is a CLI that you can use. There's a video walkthrough that's going to be attached to the docs here soon that walks you through the example that we gave today in the stream of creating that Twitter custom input. And then the UI documentation for really some idea generation. Like I never used the autocomplete component in UI, and I wanted to, and that's kind of why I built my D&D example that we talked about before. And then if you have ideas, talk about them in the community. Find somebody to partner up with even. That can be a lot of fun to kind of pair with. The contest will end, and we'll do a live stream next Thursday. That is June 17th. And so get all your contributions in before June 17th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central European Time, if I'm doing all those calculations right in my head. I guess Central European summertime. I think we're in CEST now. Is there a way to add a screenshot to this? I don't believe so right now, but that would be super handy. So we're going to be making some new changes to the Sanity Exchange in the coming months. So I will add that to our queue because I think that would be super handy. Like have that go above or below the code to kind of show what's going on. Totally great feature request. I'll bring that in and we'll add that in. I think that'd be good to have.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, any parting shots, Cap and Lauren, or chat before we let y'all go and do some amazing custom inputs? I will say keep an eye out in the announcements channel in slack.sanity.io and on Slack or on Sanity's Twitter account. We'll probably do a couple other live streams in the coming week to walk through creating custom inputs again. Maybe I'll walk through how to create the D&D custom object, and we'll kind of figure out some cool things to kind of showcase along the way. Or if you submit and you want to come on and showcase it to the community, we'll be more than happy to have you on either during the week or during our finale next week as well. So we want to showcase the amazing things that are happening. So do let us know what's happening.
Yay, I love a show and tell.
Show and tell is always amazing. All right, well, I guess without further ado, we'll call this a stream, and we'll see y'all in the community and on the exchange with your amazing new custom inputs to share. Again, June 8th through 17th.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.